Hello and welcome to Press TV's News Analysis, coming to you from Tehran. I'm AmriZioniSaudi. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, international political standards seems to be reflected differently depending on interest. When people die in Syria, it is called a massacre by some of the international communities, so much so that the Arab League has suspended Damascus from that organization. Now, when people die in Yemen, many meetings are set up with some Arab organizations, and at the end, the dictator remains in power and continues to kill as Arab leaders look the opposite direction. And then there is Bahrain, that when people are arrested or killed, the story is simply ignored. This news analysis will take a look at the latest that is happening in the Syrian situation and what is behind all of it.
18 foreign ministers of the 22-member Arab League voted to suspend Syria from their meetings.
In view of the Syrian government's failure to carry out the Arab League's initiative signed on November the 2nd, we have decided to suspend the participation of the Syrian delegation in meetings of the Arab League Council as of November 16th.
The Arab League also suggested its members withdraw their ambassadors from Damascus, but left the decision up to them. Syria's ambassador to the Arab League said the decision is unlawful and against the organization's charter. The charter of the Arab League requires a consensus from all member states on decisions like this. Yemen, Lebanon and Syria have voted against the initiative, and Iraq has abstained.
This decision made the Arab League as a carrier for the foreign intervention in Syria.
An Arab League plan has called for an end to the crackdown against anti-government protests, releasing political prisoners and allowing journalists into the country. Syria says it has implemented the deal, but Arab League says otherwise. Activists say Syrian troops and tanks are still in cities. Syria says it's fighting armed gangs, but activists say it's killing protesters. Syria says the armed groups have been financed from abroad for the deadly violence that, according to activists, has killed more than 3,000 people. Damascus says the armed gangs are being supported by the United States, especially after the U.S. State Department called on Syrians to reject an amnesty offered by Damascus. On Friday, Russian Prime Minister Vladimir Putin warned the West against a Libya-style intervention in Syria. The Arab League will meet again on Wednesday to meet with the Syrian opposition and discuss the latest developments. Many analysts say the next few days will be vital in determining the fate of one of the most important links in the chain of resistance against Israel and the U.S. in the Middle East.
Well, I'd like to welcome my guest to the program from Beirut, political analyst, Mr. Omar Nashabi. From Washington, professor of Georgetown University, Dawood Khairullah. And from Belfast, Middle East affairs expert, Mr. Saud Shaf. Thank all of you for being with us. So I'd like to start off in Beirut, Mr. Nashabi. In general, with the situation and the move that has been taken by the Arab League, it says that it has been initiated by Qatar and Saudi Arabia, both these countries that actually have monarchies themselves and do not practice democracy. Do you find it ironic that they are the ones that have been behind this initiative?
Yes, first of all, I think the most important point in this debate is the legality of the decision. And I leave that to Dr. Dawood Khairullah, who is the reference on matters of justice. Yet I want to say that the Arab League, one would have expected the Arab League to take strong decisions when it comes to dangers on the Arab world and what threatens the security of Arabs during the past years and continues to threaten the security of Arabs everywhere, and that is primarily Israel and the supporters of Israel. And the Arab League has been obsolete on that level for a very long time, so it comes as a big surprise. And this is more than just double standards. And the report that you aired just before we started our discussion here talks about Bahrain and the protesters today outside the headquarters of the Arab League, tried to actually submit a statement to Mr. Arabi, and apparently they weren't even able to submit that statement or that written document providing their position. The Syrian representative, I heard today, was not even allowed to actually complain or present his perspective. These are matters that raise serious questions on this decision that seems to be, let's say, to say the least, motivated by external pressure. And this is not. This goes without saying. I mean, the external pressure of Western powers and the United States over many Arab countries is increasing, especially on that topic.
Okay, well, let's turn to Washington and get Professor Khairullah in on this discussion. Well, Professor Khairullah, let's look at the legal aspect of this. There was not a consensus. From the legal perspective, what the Arab League has done, was it legal or not?
I think it was against the Charter. Article 8 of the Charter of the Arab League prohibits any member countries from interfering in the internal affairs, especially with respect to regime change or form of government change in any member countries. So this decision of the Arab League is against the Charter, basically, and it's in violation of the express provisions of the Charter, let alone that it is leading to dividing the Arab world and to creating more discord within Syria, encouraging certain parts against others, and promoting some kind of confessional sectarian strife inside the Syrian society.
Well, Mr. Sabshayth, now, are Arabs valued differently by the Arab League depending on if they are pro or anti-Washington's policies? We have, for example, Saleh in Yemen, who is supported by the United States, and the Arab League is basically doing nothing, while many Arab Yemenis are dying every day. What is the difference?
Let me say first, the decision to suspend Syria violates the organization charter, since the move to suspend Syria would only be invalid if taken by consensus at the summit meeting of the Arab leaders.
They didn't actually suspend Syria here. They sent a very strong message because Syria will be suspended by the 16th. So we, replying to your question, and here who is handling the Arab League since 1991, when the invasion, Iraq invaded Kuwait, is the Camp David regime, Mubarak regime at the time, took the leadership of the Arab League, and since then we can see Egypt is the main player at the Arab League. From that time they broke all the laws and charters of the Arab League, and they start moving without consensus and against the will of sovereign Arab states, especially like a founder member like Syria of the Arab League. So in here they are implementing the United States of America's agenda, and you look at the scenario of Bahrain or Yemen, there is nothing, no move on that. Only they are targeting the resistance camps in here. Since the Arab League is trying to be the Trojan horse in here to infiltrate inside Syria using these forces, which they are armed groups inside Syria, most of them being brought and trained in Iraq and in Afghanistan, and they put them in action in Syria, like what happened in Libya as well. Some of the groups in Libya being brought through the Egyptian border to Libya from Iraq and that kind of area. This is the alliance between these fanatic groups of the United States of America and these fanatic groups to create what they call in the Middle East the fragmented Emirates, who is supported by Saudi Arabia, the Gulf states, and the United States of America to keep the war in terror going. The aim in here in Syria is very dangerous game they are playing, because the target is clearly the resistance and Iran as well. since they try to, some pragmatic politicians in the West think, by sort of compromising on the Iranian nuclear program with the Iranian regime, maybe Iran will drop supporting Syria. Then they can swallow Syria and divide Syria. By doing that, they can destroy the resistance in the Arab world, and in the future, they can corner Iran. This is the same mistake was carried on by the Iraqis in the 90s and repeated by the Libyans when they heard and believed in the West promises. Gaddafi surrendered all his program of developing nuclear power in there and long-range missiles, and he paid the price heavily, as we see. So the target right here is Iran and Syria together. They are trying to tackle Syria first and the resistance to pay for the 2006 defeat in Lebanon, and then after eliminating Syria, they'll try to move on to Iran.
Now, Mr. Nashabi, do you agree with Mr. Shaf that basically the Arab League is carrying out whatever they're doing at the orders of the behest of the United States? And if you do believe that, why would it be in the interest of the Arab League members to listen to Washington?
Well, I think many of the followers of this program would be smiling when they hear the question, because there are so many examples that we can see. But let me provide one example. I think what actually preceded the decision by the Arab League a few days ago, there was a statement by the Obama administration and a call for the gunmen in Syria not to abandon, not to surrender their weapons to the authorities after the authorities had called them to surrender their weapons in return for amnesty. And that was a decision by the Syrian Ministry of Interior as part of a goodwill towards finding the beginning of a solution. Or at least stabilizing the security in cities like Homs, that has been, where a lot of destruction actually occurred. A lot of people died because there are some people holding weapons and using these weapons against the Syrian army. And that would not be acceptable in any country anywhere in the world. I mean, the regular army of any country would actually be legally allowed to use its military force to arrest anyone who's holding weapons and using it against the sovereignty of the state. I mean, that is a basic standard procedures. Anyway, after this decision, there was another incident that actually occurred in Cairo. And that incident was that the Arab League apparently was not able to ensure that there's a balance between the different representatives of the Syrian opposition. Part of the Syrian opposition was beaten up at the entrance of the Arab League headquarters. And because this part of the opposition refuses any foreign intervention in Syrian affairs, and therefore they were not welcome in the headquarters. And I think there was a serious assault on some of the members of this group. That is a group that has been opposing the regime in Syria and the government in Syria since more than 10, 15 years. Anyway, all this shows that there is clearly a plan. And I don't think such a plan and such a process can take place without the interference of one of the major players and the major influence, the major power that has spheres of influence all over the Arab world because of oil, because of strategic interests, and most importantly, because of the need to protect and to ensure the security of Israel.
Well, let me get Dr. Khairullah back in on this. What does this all mean as far as from an international perspective? Now, Mr. Nashabi talked about a couple of points. One I want to look at as far as the United States actually encouraging or discouraging the Syrian people from turning their arms in. Let's look at the influence of the United States on these international organizations and the legality or lack thereof of this type of interference, and what can be done to stop this type of interference in your perspective?
Well, first, it is outrageous that any foreign government, including the U.S., would encourage carrying arms against an internal form of government, any kind of government. This is against international law. Then, whatever demonstration, peaceful demonstration, are allowed under international law or the internal constitutional law, would the protection that these individuals would be given by constitutional law and by international law would be lost, and a different kind of laws would apply to armed resistance. This, according to internal law, this would be considered high treason by those who would hold arms against the government, or trying to, especially in the Syrian case, and there is plenty of evidence that security forces, military were assaulted, were killed, were murdered by armed gangs. For the US or any other government to support and to tell these people, to encourage these people not to... I don't know what's happening.
Can you hear me?
Hello?
Okay, we'll try to reestablish that connection. Let me turn to Belfast. Now, Mr. Schaff, looking at that same question, what has happened in the world? Now, it seems as the standards are set by a few countries, and then these so-called international agencies just follow suit. So what is the way or the direction for those countries who want to protect their sovereignty? What do you think is the best way? What do they need to do at this point in time with a situation like we have the status quo?
I think the student march in London gave us an answer to some of your questions. When they didn't march to 10 Downing Street as usual, most of the marches went, and they went to the city of London, the stock market. The message said there who is controlling the United Kingdom and Europe, the multinationals. And the same thing applies to America, and that's from there we can see the Occupy Wall Street movement. And then when they fight the system, we've seen the hypocrisy of the United States of America as the UNESCO fiasco, when the United States of America punishes the world for voting Palestine into a United Nations body, and withheld the money from there, and the threatening by using veto at the Security Council. This is standing against the will of the world, and they are coming to the Middle East and telling us they are standing for freedom and for democracy values, when they defy the international community, when they dictate to the international community, when they put fanatic groups in all over the Middle East to disable the system in there and to create chaos in the Middle East. We know now who we are fighting. We are fighting multinationals who are interested in sucking the wealth and selling us lies, and some idiots in some areas in the Middle East believe them. They think Qatar is a state. Qatar is actually the base of ideas. That is the military, United States military there, and the CIA there, who runs the affairs of the Middle East from Qatar. And Al-Thani and the rest of them, they are puppets in there. They want to stay. These guys, they done a coup in their own father, and they expelled their own father outside the country. So you cannot trust them with their own family. How are you going to trust them with another Arab League affairs? These guys in there to serve a Zionist agenda. We seen and we heard before, and was confirmed last week, Saudi Arabia agreed in 1930 to surrender Palestine to Zionism, and agreed with the British Empire then to use Palestine to whatever see its fit. So we are dealing with the Gulf states, the Arabian states in the Gulf, as puppets for the United States of America to abuse any stability in the Middle East and to cause chaos and to implement the agenda. If our people don't understand and they believe the soft power of Al Jazeera, and Qatar from that soft power thing is the size of China, want to force its way in and make it in like what has happened in Libya. We can hear Jibril, who was the Prime Minister of the Transnational Council in Libya, what he's saying lately about the interference of Qatar in Libya. And we can understand those guys, what they think. They think they are God's gift to the area because they act in the name of Zionism and the name of imperialism. But
Okay.
one day, and soon enough, the
I'm
Arab
almost
people
out
will
of time,
win.
Mr. Shah. I'm so sorry. I'm almost out of time. Just want to get Mr. Nashabi back in on this. What do you think at this point in time that what does Syria needs to do?
Well, I can tell you that if President Assad had agreed to cut ties with Iran, and if he had agreed to help the Western efforts and the American efforts to actually destroy the resistance that is today in the hands of Hezbollah in Lebanon, I don't think this decision would have been out today, and I don't think the media would have such a huge coverage, and I don't think there would be any concern of human rights in Syria. That I can tell you, and I am confident.
Okay, and on that note, so sorry, but we are out of time. I'd like to thank all of my guests. From Beirut, political analyst Mr. Omar Nashabi. From Washington, Professor of Georgetown University, Dawood Khairullah. And from Belfast, Middle East Affairs expert, Mr. Saud Shaif. Thank you all for being with us. And as always, viewers, we thank you for being with us right here in another look at the news analysis. Join us same place, same time tomorrow. I'm Marzia Hashimi signing out for myself and all the crew right here in Tehran. Thank you so much for being with us, and goodbye.